Hello, my friends, and welcome to live coverage of GP Birmingham. What a pleasure it is to have your company. My name's Riley. I'm joined by Simon Goertzen, straight out of Germany here, and Javier Dominguez and Christopher Larsen are going at it in round number 4 here. Both these players fresh off their 3 buys, and they'll be looking to get ahead nice and early here, Simon.
Yeah, not a bad start for the feature match area in round 4. I would say European mainstays. More fatal pushes, more Lilianas. That's what I like.
Yeah, we're seeing this stuff immediately, this sort of technology open up this game immediately. But yes, these two are no strangers to the top tables of Magic, of course. We've seen Dominguez and Larsen both make their Pro Tour appearances very recently in Kyoto.
I think Larsen quite successfully also.
Oh, I tell you what, it was a bit of a heartbreak for him at the end. He didn't quite get the points he needed to push himself over the line, and I understand he obviously had a rough couple of nights after that. But I think he was shooting for platinum, I think it was. Or it might have even just been gold. And he didn't quite manage to get there. But yes, he did have a good weekend nonetheless. Javier Dominguez, of course, a man who doesn't need too much of an introduction. He's a very, very well-established and successful player in European Magic, as we see the Noble Hierarch bite the dust here, thanks to Fatal Push. And what a card, Fatal Push. I mean, is there a card, Simon Goertzen, that has had a more immediate and more profound impact on the modern format in recent times?
Not in a long time, yeah. This is probably the card that has changed the most. And the nice thing about answers is that they don't dominate by themselves, right? They just open up other avenues. They change the evaluation of certain cards. Certainly, funnily, Tarmogoyf has gotten weaker because of Fatal Push. On the other hand, it's still everywhere. So it's kind of funny. Basically, Lightning Bolt is the card that has suffered the most.
Yeah, Lightning Bolt stocks have absolutely plummeted in Modern in recent times. We've seen this, the days of this spell being absolutely ubiquitous around all of the red decks. It's long gone. Consigned to dust here. As we see the second Noble Hierarch coming down for Larsen, and it's also going to get eaten up by this Liliana of the Veil with the Edict effect this time. So now we see Tarmogoyf getting in for, I think, 4 points of damage.
Javier appears to be playing almost outdated version of Jund Death Shadow. So no blue cards to be seen, no Grixis Death Shadow, and even I would even say Jund Death Shadow less popular than Abzan Death Shadow or Abzan Traverse. So I'm gonna be looking at his list later to see what he's brought to the table.
We did see we did see the sort of 4-color Death Shadow, which, as you say, was very much the deck of yesteryear when Death Shadow was first being really explored as it was more or less a zoo deck back then. But today, favouring interaction, blue cards, red cards, removal, counter spells, and what have you. But no, Dominguez looks to be playing a pretty straight and honest game here with Tarmogoyf getting in there.
Who knows? He might even be playing Temur Battle Rage. It's not impossible to think about. Now, Larsen, what is he playing? It's funny how our overlay also doesn't know. We are still trying to figure that out, basically.
Bit of a mystery here. It could be, I mean, at this stage I'm looking at cards like Noble Hierarch, and I'm thinking a collected company-based deck with perhaps the Vizier Devoted Druid combo, something like that.
And I think that's exactly the case. We might be seeing Renegade Rallier. So that's the name?
Yeah, Renegade Rallier.
The Revolt card.
Brings back a creature from the bin, and I think that's exactly what we're going to see here. 3-2 coming back with the Noble Hierarch. Of course, Revolt triggered thanks to the fetch land that went away, and that's a tidy little 2-for-1 here for Christopher Larsen.
Yeah. I also experimented with Renegade Rallier in the Abzan Traverse decks. Just getting back Tarmogoyf and Grim Flayer, maybe Death Shadow, depending on your list, is quite powerful.
So Larsen now being hit with an Inquisition of Kozilek. We didn't even see the card that he took. We've got a Birds of Paradise hanging out there as well, but he slammed that other card away, so making his opponent's decision for him there.
Yeah, unfortunately, a bit off the screen, so we cannot.
Yeah, we need to
see that.
We'll see if we can get that graveyard moved up so we can actually see what's going on there for Christopher Larsen. Because, of course, I mean, just like in many of these other Eternal formats, the graveyard of huge importance recently. We've seen cards like Rest in Peace, Relic of Progenitus, Leyline of the Void. All of these cards are really important pieces of technology in today's modern format.
I don't think it has been as relevant as now in almost forever. Of course, there were the times where Dredge was the #1 deck in the format, but that was one reason to care about the graveyard. Now, almost every deck cares about the graveyard. That's the big difference.
This is a good point. A lot of them do care about the graveyard. I mean, even decks from Death Shadow all the way down to Storm, none of them are relying on it in the way that we've seen. A deck like Dredge obviously is, but there are many decks who use the graveyard for incidental value and what have you without being stone cold dead to a rest in peace, for example.
Yes, there are only a very few decks like Living End and Dredge, which absolutely have to have an intact graveyard.
Looks like it was the old Kitchen Finkerinos there that was sent to the bin thanks to the Inquisition of Kozilek, and that Birds has found its way there as well.
Okay, none of these cards are vital to Christopher Larson's strategy. If he can find a collected company at this stage of the game, almost always the best card you can find.
Traverse the Elven Wild is going to fetch out a Death Shadow now.
I like the speed, the crispness of play here. Javier just saying, Traverse, Death Shadow, activate Liliana, and Christopher already knew it was coming, had the forest in hand to discard. Yeah,
Christopher Larson is a man who certainly gets on the front foot. His speed of play, he's a very a forthright and a forward-thinking player. He's very confident, I would say. That's definitely a word that I think you could ascribe to this gentleman.
Well,
and Javier Dominguez also...
look at these guns, I mean...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're here at the National Exhibition Centre. I didn't realise there was also a gun show in addition to the Festival of Quilts that's down the hall. But no, Christopher Larson, no slouch. I mean, playing against him is a truly terrifying experience, as I can personally attest. But Dominguez as well. This guy, I mean, you know, he knows how to win a game of Magic, as we see. Larson now. Looks like we're going to see a recruiter activation. Yes, indeed. Noble Hierarch is going to hit the bin after the Edict effect from Liliana. So Dominguez looking to get maximum value out of his cards, as is Larson with that Kitchen Finks picked up there.
Yeah, and it's now an interesting race because Javier now has a lethal creature. With the Marsh Flats, he can pump his Death Shadow, but he doesn't have to. So this is kind of the best situation that you can be in, where your opponent is forced to chump block, but you don't have to go down to 4 life, for example.
Well, we are going to see the block here from Larson, priced into blocking that Death Shadow, of course, given that it can grow to become a 7/7 at a moment's notice. And Larson knocked down to 1.
No spell by Javier.
So we have now the Kralon Horde Howler. Let the dog off the leash. Kitchen Finks in hand, of course, still revealed because it was taken off of the Duskwatch Recruiter. That's a courtesy. It's not mandatory there.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it's trivial, but sometimes it can also help you to remember what your opponent knows about and what he doesn't.
Kitchen Finks played for 2 here, thanks to the Howler's ability, buffering Larson's life total. He does have chump blocks for days, so will we see something like a Team of Battle Rage, Simon?
That would have to be top decked. I don't think, and I'm not even sure if it's in the deck in this current iteration.
So away goes the Howler, and the Kitchen Finks comes back for an encore performance as the crowd takes to its feet. We're going to see Horizon Canopy cashed in for a better card here. Larson.
What did Larson draw last turn? He doesn't sacrifice the Canopy.
So in hand here.
It's Eternal Witness drawn this turn and the Collected Company from last turn.
Okay, so obviously choosing to cast the Kitchen Finks to stay alive rather than gamble on the Collected Company last turn. Down to 4 thanks to the Horizon Canopy.
He was also at 1, right? I think he had to gain the life.
Ah, yes. So we've just seen the... We saw the Eternal Witness revealed, and then the Collected Company played.
Accidentally
revealed, yes, indeed.
No reason to...
No reason to reveal the card? No?
Just checking, because, you know, there are lands that ask you to reveal a creature.
That is true. No, I think it was just an accident here. And we see Viscera Seer and a Birds of Paradise. Now, obviously, Larson would have been hoping for a map effect here, a Vizier or an Anafenza, whichever flavour he's chosen to incorporate here, because that would have been game over on the spot.
And now the problem is he cannot afford to take 1 more hit of the Tarmogoyf. That would be 1 chump block per turn is very doable in a deck with Eternal Witnesses, Kitchen Finks, and Collected Companies. Now it looks like Larson will have to scry his way to another Collected Company to have a chance. And of course, no chance of beating a Battle Rage.
So Larson here with his back against the wall. He can line up blocks thanks to the Birds of Paradise, but you would think that Kitchen Finks and that Viserys here are also going to have to jump. Oh, an attack. Look at this. Getting on the front foot and knocking Dominguez down to 5 here. That's a strong play from Larson as Dominguez knocks himself down to 4 after having used that Marsh Flats. And inside we find a Godless Shrine. So Larson now seems to be dead to a removal spell.
Yeah, I don't understand why Larson attacks here. To be honest, he has no reach, and the Seer is actually quite a nice part of the combo, whereas the Kitchen Finks that has already has the -1/-1 counter, it's not really all that useful.
No, that is true. Even a
I mean,
even with the other part of the combo,
maybe there's a chance of winning now. Let's say because of Exalted.
Okay. Yes.
It's a tiny chance, but it's there. I think I would have tried to go for the combo or for a longer game. Just kept the Viserys here around, hope to scry into Collected Company and continue going from there.
Larson sends one below decks, but he had to have a good old think about that one, Simon, which is interesting. And now a Street Wraith, which is not unblockable at this stage. Larson is playing black, but we don't have any swamps just yet. So 2 cards in hand here for the Big Dane. What could he have? Dominguez staying hydrated. So important, stay hydrated. You've got to stay fresh. And I don't understand that configuration of Larson's graveyard. We seem to have a 4-3-6 configuration there. Highly perplexing indeed. He's obviously not dead. Or he's on the biggest slow roll that we've ever seen. No,
he still has the witness, so he can at the very least witness into birds for more chump blocking, but then you're left with 0 creatures.
And Larson decides that the percentage is not in his favor, and so he's going to pack it up. Game 1 goes to Javier Dominguez. Aggressive early plays using his Liliana to good effect, and of course Death Shadow Tarmogoyf undercosted beaters getting him across the line there. So Larson going to have to dig deep and find what he needs in his sideboard in order to steady the ship here into game number 2.
Yeah, and this is not a matchup he's upset about playing. This should be, I would say, maybe even a little bit in his favor.
Well, let's talk about this, because obviously Death Shadow at the moment, it has the, regardless of which flavor you're playing it in, whether it's Grixis, Esper, Temur, you know, Azorius, whatever it is, right? It's got a target painted on it. We know that people are going to come into tournaments of Magic, playing Modern, and play pretty loosey-goosey with their life totals. We know that that's going to happen. Now, it's not at a point of dominance where people are, where, you know, you can really say it's running roughshod over the format. People are able to combat this deck. And, Simon, as people sit down to consider their options in a tournament like this, you know, what are the percentages looking like for Death Shadow, generally speaking? How dominant is it as a force in the metagame? How beatable is it, I guess, is my question here.
I think it's beatable. It doesn't have matchups where it just steamrolls the opponent. It's really, for me, it's the new Jund.
Yeah, sure.
It's just this 55% deck with super high interactivity. Of course, there are some matchups which are worse, some matchups which are better. Javier is playing the Temur Battle Rage version. I saw it during sideboarding. He will also get some games off of Combo or Tron because of his configuration. Yeah. But ultimately, you are just favored against a large majority of the metagame. That's what you want.
And essentially what I think it comes down to more than anything else is just the cost of the cards. They all cost 1, they all cost 2, especially in Grixis. I mean, 50% of your deck costs 1 mana, yes. And this is including hard counter spells like Stubborn Denial, and the interaction is just, it's the most cheap, sleek, and efficient interaction there is, and that comes at the cost of your life total. I
was sitting here with Maren, and I said, if you play Grixis Death Shadow, the reason to play it is that you are playing basically a legacy deck, from the cost of your cards.
Yeah, sure.
And one thing that Christopher Larson is now looking at, he has this deck that generates value with Collected Company and Court of Calling the combo, but he's being disrupted super heavily. So while the Death Shadow deck puts on a clock. So this is kind of the dance that we already saw in game 1. I mean, ignoring this attack from Kitchen Finks, we basically have a creature-based combo deck that's trying to stay alive, and this machine of a Death Shadow deck that's trying to beat that. And it's going to be interesting to see how Javier sideboards, because he can always go into a more mid-range control link style.
Move up the chain a little bit and get some bigger hitters out.
One card I love in this matchup, and it's not entirely obvious from the get-go, is Collective Brutality.
Okay.
You would think that's a card against Burn, right?
Yeah,
you kill the Eidolon and you take the next Boros-Charm.
And gain 2 life.
But against all Collected Company decks, it actually takes the scariest card out of your opponent's hand.
Okay.
While killing cards like Hierarchs, Birds, Duskwatch Recruiters, combo pieces, Devoted Druids. So I think this card, Collected Company, is a card that you should always bring in if you're facing
Collective Brutality.
Collective Brutality if you're facing Collected Company decks.
I've been so impressed with this card. I mean, since it since it was printed in Eldritch Moon and the relatively slow uptake it's had in Modern, it really obviously an absolute house against Burn. But yeah, what I like about this card, Simon, as you said, is that it's just raw utility. None of the modes by themselves are worth 2 mana, but the fact that you can combine them and the fact that it's such a fair and straightforward way to leverage an advantage out of a board, and it's all one card. You're discarding lands, you're discarding Lingering Souls, whatever.
It's always a fair trade. Yeah.
It's always a fair deal. No, that's a great observation. I mean, I think there's a lot more depth to the card, as it is, and even if you're playing against Celestial Colonnade decks, a 2 mana duress against these cards is still good enough.
And you might want that 1 or 2 duresses in your sideboard anyway.
Yeah,
So you should just upgrade them to Collective Brutality.
I mean, and this is the strength of the card in that it can come in against Burn, it can come in against company decks, whatever else, but it still has this upside. It's not a dead card. This is what we see out of removal spells. You can't play Infinite Doomblades if you're gonna face off against a blue-white control deck, because you're never going to have targets for it. You have to sideboard them out. Collective Brutality opens up another window. Really impressed with this card. We'll see if Javier Dominguez has chosen to bring it into his 60, his starting 60 here.
To be fair, we don't know if it's in his sideboard.
That is true. That is true. We'll see, of course, whether that ends up being the case. Looks like Larsen's down to 6.
Yes.
Unfortunate start here for the Dane. Already a game down and now taking a mulligan.
But this was, for me, it was a big revelation. When for example, I was playing the Junt Death Shadow deck during a time when Elves was quite popular.
Okay.
They had just included the new combo, and it was kind of, I think Martin User played it at the GP, so people were trying it out on Magic Online. And then you were trying to combo them out, like racing them, putting your life total low, and having the winning battle rage, which sometimes works, but sometimes also doesn't work. You lose the race. But then I just brought in all my Collective Brutalities, and I said, bring it on. I will kill your 1-drop and take your company, and then it's a completely different game.
It's a huge liability as well, playing a card like Collected Company in the face of cards like Duress-like type effects. It costs 4. I mean, that's even if it's coming down on turn 3 a lot of the time, thanks to Noble Hierarchs, it still costs 4. Larsen's happy with his 6, scries 1 to the top, and now Dominguez is off to the races as well. Looks like he's going to shock himself and do nothing else. So we got another play here.
He has the He has the delayed trigger of the Mishra's Bauble that he resolved.
Okay. So he's drawn that, and now we're back to Larsen, who is in the middle of fetching out a card. It's another Temple Garden here.
Oh, both players are racing to the bottom.
Yes, this seems to be, from Larsen, there seems to be a much more... it seems the black seems to be very much a splash. Just a little splash ski for the old Viscera. Maybe some other cards out the board.
Much more green-white. Also, Viscera, if you play it as a one-off, can come down through Company,
Court of Calling,
Birds of Paradise. So you don't need too many sources for it.
No, for sure. I mean, it does open options in the sideboard, of course. Maybe Collective Brutality even. Look at that. See if Larsen has got that particular piece of technology. As Dominguez draws some cards, does some cycling.
Yeah, he's winning the life total race.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? It's funny, he's in a better position because he's on 14. Death Shadow down to 12 now, luckily for him. It was still on 14 when he played that. Wouldn't have been a good play. And, Sagada. Host of Herons has been brought in for Larsen here.
If he had an untapped land, he could already cast it, right? That would be... I mean, Devoted Druid is not only a combo card. It also just Yeah, gives you 2 mana.
Yeah, legitimate ramp cut, as we've seen it here. It's ramp Larson all the way up to 4 mana here. And he's been able to cast this Recruiter as well as another Devoted Druid.
I love the interaction with Azuri. If you have 2 Devoted Druids out, you just overrun, and that gives you 6 new mana, and then you overrun again.
Very good. We did see some of these cards in a previous match with Elves coming down and taking apart a burn opponent. That was quite a highlight so far. Back to Larson now as Dominguez starts to develop his board. Couple of 3/3s. Tarmogoyf as well.
Wow.
And is this... Oh, it was Dusk to Dawn just cast.
And Javier is on 10.
Jeez.
So the Death Shadows were 3/3.
3/3s, yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Just enough to be taken out by Dusk to Dawn. This sweeper has really turned things around for Larson here. A straight up 3-for-1 there. Death Shadow, the follow-up play here for Dominguez as a 5/5. And that's brutal stuff there.
Yeah, insane. That's...
Dusk to Dawn, a great piece of technology in this company list.
You can make sure that your creatures don't die because most of them are quite weak, which is usually a downside. But in this case,
I mean, it brings everything back from the bin as well. When the sun finally rises, you're getting back more or less every creature that's in there. Kitchen Fink's the only one that it doesn't really hit. So Fatal Push taking care of this Devoted Druid. Not so devoted anymore. Slacking off on the job. What's going on? And Larson draws again. Old main phase Path to Exile here.
He has another Devoted Druid. Yeah, maybe a bit flooded with the Druids.
Too much devotion going on here as the Howler gets... Oh, sorry, the Recruiter gets in.
He just casts it. There's nothing to risk, really. He wants to get that Sigarda onto the battlefield. He could have also activated the Recruiter. That was the alternative line.
So, of course, what this deck is aiming to do with this infinite mana, you sort of, you look at something like the Vizier Druid combo, and what can they actually do with that mana, Simon? Well, the answer is, of course, with the Recruiter, they can churn through every single card in their deck, essentially, as we see the Host of Herons come down. But where does that get them?
Well, they have one win condition in their deck, usually, which is... often it's Walking Ballista, one copy of Walking Ballista, because it makes a lot of sense in regular gameplay. Some people tried Ronas, the Indomitable,
but then you need an attacker.
Yeah, I didn't like that so much. There are other ways, of course. If you have infinite mana and you can search your deck for any creature, you can put... I mean, nobody does that, but you could put Emrakul in your deck and win that way.
But Walking Ballista, obviously, also a decent card on turn 2 to play, or what have you. And in this case, however, Larson not needing it. Sigarda, the Host of Herons, enough to push him over the top as Dominguez, of course, on 5. And the 5/5 Hexproof Flyer was going to finish the job. Larson
just crushed this game.
Yeah.
The Dusk was amazing, and Javier was sitting there with the Temur Battle Rage, and this is exactly the tension I was talking about. Are you a Battle Rage combo deck, or are you a mid-range deck trying to beat the company deck? Which is difficult. If there's this 4 mana instant that just basically threatens to overwhelm you. We've talked about this a lot. 4 mana instant speed, 6 mana worth of creatures. That's
some of which will just win you the game on the SPAT. That's right.
Because they combo together or whatever.
Yeah. It's funny how these weak kind of piddling creatures can really leverage themselves into such a strong position. The play that obviously really broke the back of Dominguez's game plan there was Dusk to Dawn.
Of course.
And we need to discuss that a little bit further. This is again a recent addition to the modern card pool, and one that obviously warrants exploration. If these green decks are already playing these piddling little creatures, Dusk to Dawn rewards them for that.
Yeah. Traditionally, the company-based decks have had a good matchup against the Abrupt Decay decks, because one-on-one removal is not where you want to be. And then there was always some kind of trump card to get you over the top, and it used to be Gavany Township. It was just, let's play a fair game, and then my creatures just start growing every turn. And cards like Sigarda, we've also seen in the times of Birthing Pod, Birthing Pod against Jump.
Yeah.
But now it's just, I'm playing a combo deck, I'm playing for Collected Company, I know your creatures are harder hitting, cheaper, you have the disruption, but this is kind of the point. Do you manage to win early enough, or will my stronger cards win?
It does give the green-white deck a really interesting late game in the sense that, you know, it can relieve the pressure early and then refuel your hand later on. But obviously, yeah, an interesting comparison there with Gavany Township, another card that looks to shore up the late game on the back of, you know, playing 0-1s and 2-1s and whatever else. But now, with things all tied up between Javier Dominguez and Christopher Larsen, it remains to be seen which way the cards are going to fall between these two wizards.
So,
of course, could go either way. This is I think you mentioned before, Simon, the figure that you said was a 55% matchup for the Death Shadow deck. I don't know if that's exactly where we are here, but it's close.
No, I like I said, this one depends a lot on the sideboarding, and Javier is trying to play this as aggressive as possible still, but wouldn't you rather be the Grixis deck with the Stubborn Denials?
In a situation like this, facing off against things like Collected Company, Court of Calling, for sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's just Snapcaster Mage to flashback the Fatal Pushes.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of arguments that make you not want to be the Temur Battle Rage Death Shadow, which I was very surprised to see. I love the deck, but I think it's almost dominated in the metagame by Grixis Death Shadow.
Yeah.
For if you're looking at reasons why to play certain decks, and actually Javier is probably one of the best, one of the most successful players in this room. So we should get his. We should pick his brain. Yeah,
have a chat about exactly why he's made the choice. Because as you said, Grixis Shadow, it seems to have, I mean, it has the best threats in the form of, you know, things like Death Shadow, and then it goes up the chain with the Delve cards.
For me,
Tasiga.
For me, I didn't need much convincing to switch to Grixis Death Shadow after having played a few mirrors.
Okay.
You just play the mirror,
just crushes the mirror,
and they have 6 and 7 mana creatures, and all your creatures die to Fatal Push.
Yep.
And that's just, you can bring in Nihil Spellbomb, but they will always find that Fatal Push to flashback with Snapcaster Mage, and it just doesn't feel great.
You just sit behind those Delve creatures. You've got Thought Scours to get them on there. You've got the best removal, the best interaction. You've got the best card in Snapcaster Mage. For sure, Grixis Shadow is the real deal. Javier Dominguez now having a think about what he's going to do with this little bauble here.
Yeah, he checked out the top of his deck, saw that there was a forest, and then decided not to crack his fetch land because he wanted to keep that card on top.
Thought sees the draw here for Dominguez.
Yeah, Javier actually optimized his line of play to get the maximum chances of drawing mana sources.
Okay.
Because that's what he was lacking.
Blood Crypt comes out of that Verdant Catacombs. Looks like Christopher Larsen also with a fetch land of the Wooded Foothills to start things off, and it's Tarmogoyf coming down as a 2/3.
What this play cost Javier was basically not being able to cast Thoughtseize on turn 1, which is not a big deal because you kind of want to hit the Collected Company anyway.
Yeah, you cast it on turn 2, turn 3. And right now, definitely up to turn 3, of course, with Larsen with no birds or hierarchs to speak of. And we move on to his second turn. No plays. Interesting.
Did Larsen mulligan? Or
yes, down to 6 mulligan for Larsen here. He's got a pair of Paths to Exiles in hand. That may help Dominguez with his mana issues.
And that's not something you want to cast early against the Death Shadow deck, which is kind of cheating on lands, and then you give them a free one that maybe Javier doesn't have too many basics. That's another thing. Whoa.
So, company, path, forest.
Yeah, and Christopher put the path into the graveyard because that was the only choice.
Yes, indeed. You can see Dominguez writing these cards down now. So and 3 pair for Larsen there.
But with this hand, you do path the Tarmogoyf, right? Because you just want to buy time, I think.
I mean, those yeah, we're going to see it snapped off here. This is the thing about the Collected Company decks, is that once they can get that chain rolling, especially if you're hitting Eternal Witnesses with your Collected Companies, just get that value train running, and it's full steam ahead out the station here.
Yeah, and Javier does have the second basic. I think that's actually very crucial to not only play one basic line.
Okay. Larsen continuing to play these cards revealed here.
Delirium also now enabled.
Yeah, sure. Another Thoughtseize. And it's a Sagada, host of Herons. What's Dominguez going to go for here? Here's a read of it. So 5/5 flying hexproof, and your opponent can't make you sacrifice permanents. Essentially, is what the card reads.
He takes it. That's how scared he is. Of
well, there's no answer. There's no answer that this deck has for it at all. They can't block it. They can't kill it. It just stays there and beats him to death.
Yeah, minusing Liliana is not
going to do it. Overgrown Tomb for Christopher Larson. So it looks like we're going to start having companies cast around the place here. And Simon Goetzen, this spells this is dangerous stuff here for Dominguez here.
Yes, Dominguez is not happy about it, but on the other hand, he's sitting there with a hand full of removal, so he knows that these companies are going to be awkward but beatable. He can actually deploy his cards and do something about it. I think he also has a Kozilek's Return from the sideboard. So if Larson is not careful, he might actually trade his companies against the sweeper.
Straight into that. And that's smart moves from the Death Shadow deck, because of course Kozilek's Return rarely doing enough damage to snag their own creatures. Of course 2 damage isn't going to get rid of many things in the Death Shadow list.
It's the reverse Dusk, right?
Yeah,
it's the opposite. Basically.
It's the opposite. It's the sun rising in the west. Collected company for Larson now. Does Dominguez have any kind of response? As you mentioned, Simon Goetzen, a handful of answers. There is a Death Shadow hanging out in there, but at the moment it is of course a 0/0. Not the best card to deploy.
He's just hoping for 0 hits. That's the stage we're in. But what's going to be interesting is, when does Javier deploy his removal?
Okay.
Does he want to take some extra damage maybe? Because he might... Oh, wow.
Double Finks. Here we go. This is very interesting. This is very good against the Kozilek's Return. This is very good against the handful of removal.
Yeah.
Very resilient threats here.
Also, of course, very good against Death Shadow in general. If you are not facing Team or Battle Rage, it's almost unbeatable.
So
and
this represents 8 life.
Yeah. And you will beat down, right? You don't leave your opponent on 13. Going from 13 to 6, I think, is too big of a hit. Double
Finks is a huge hit here for Larson, and he's firmly ahead now, I would say. As we see him going to get ready to line up some attacks here, and Dominguez, I mean, he does have removal to bring to bear, but it's sort of treading water here for him.
It's a losing battle long term, yes. Larson, he passes. Okay. 13 is just, it's...
Yeah.
Javier doesn't care so much because he's holding Dismembers, I think.
And a Street Wraith now as well. So ships. And we're going to see another collected company. So it looks like Dominguez is really hoping to leverage this Kozilek's Return. Now, Christopher Larson doesn't seem to have the read.
Oh, that's
Eternal Witness.
But that's also an almost impossible read to have, right?
Eternal Witness getting back Sigarda as well. That's hot.
Who needs companies if you can just... Is that correct, though?
I don't know. Not my job to know that. It's yours. What is it? Is it correct?
I'm questioning this play.
All right.
Because just having company every turn is going to bury your opponent.
So it seems that Dominguez has some kind of a response here. We see the collected company... Oh, no, it was collected company brought back. Okay. All right. Well... Kozilek's Return is going to clean up the scraps there and leave these Kitchen Finks as 2/1s now. So now ultimately it was the company that was brought back, Simon.
Okay, so...
A sigh of relief from my colleague here. And his hand is looking pretty good. Duskwatch Recruiter amongst it, of course. And are we still going to see no attacks from Larson? This is a very techie play.
Yeah, if we didn't see attacks last time, if you don't want to deal 6 to your opponent when he's at 13, why would you want to deal 4?
Well, then the Death Shadows are a little bit smaller.
No, he's saying, I'm going to force you to do that to yourself.
Oh, I see. All right.
This is now a completely different game because it has no notion of a race whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's now going to be Javier, and this is where playing this deck is really a lot of fun. He will go onto a life total less than 13, but not necessarily low. Let's say 11 or 12, and then he will play these little Death Shadows. Maybe even be safe from Dusk. That would be the kicker. and then at some point he wants to have fetch lands in play.
Yeah.
Dismembers in hand.
And Street Wraiths as well.
Street Wraiths, Battle Ragers, and just attack for lethal.
put himself to 1 and get in there. Fatal Push on the Scavenging Ooze. Leaves a Duskwatch Recruiter hanging around with those Kitchen Finks. But yeah, is that the line here?
Does he kill the Duskwatch Recruiter? I don't think he can beat the... Yeah, he cannot beat the
activated ability.
The card advantage.
Mm-hmm. So the draw for Larson, we see 2 Druids.
Mm-hmm. Taking it slow once again. His final card is another Duskwatch, which is now a bit weak to a lot of effects, like this card.
Team of Battle Rage in hand for Dominguez, freshly drawn off the top. He's got a full grip here.
Mm-hmm. You might think that's a bad draw, but it's kind of what he's looking for.
Yeah, he needs it at some point
to prepare a chance of winning.
Okay, here we go. He's pulled the trigger. Dominguez now down to 9, and that means that we are going to have these boys come out to play as well. Just the 1 though. There are 2 in hand for Dominguez. He's only choosing to deploy 1 of them here.
I think he has to respect the danger of Christopher having the combo or finding it with Collected Company.
So he needs to keep up that other dismember that he has, or maybe perhaps another piece of removal.
Also, the main reason for playing this Death Shadow is just to save 1 mana later.
Okay.
You don't want to start attacking because you don't want to attack your 4/4 into 26 life and maybe have it blocked, or that's not your game plan.
Like so Dominguez is looking to go from 26 to 0, basically.
If possible. 26 is a lot. 26 is difficult.
That's insane. That's so cool.
And at the same time, Larson is going to go for also basically he wants to go from 9 to 0 or win with infinite damage.
Well, Duskwatch Recruiter is going to get dismembered once again. We're going to see an activation, however, for Larson, so hopefully he'll be able to replace it. And it's an Eternal Witness. That's a big hit here. So this means that we can see, a Sagada. We can see a Collected Company come back here as Dominguez looks through what options Larson has.
Path to Exile. Not out of the question either. Because what is Larson losing to? It's only Death Shadow plus Battle Rage, I think. Beautiful match. I love it.
Yeah, the texture of this one really interesting. We saw some pretty blisteringly fast ones in games 1 and 2, but now things have really slowed down. And as you mentioned, Simon, this game is being fought on an entirely different axis now.
And one of the storylines, early storylines, is, or I've been asked a lot, why are not more people playing Death Shadow if I'm calling it the best deck in the format?
Okay.
And I think this game shows a little bit why. It's just really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult deck to play.
With and against. Which is, one of the reasons why I think it makes for still a healthy format.
Yeah.
It's powerful, but it's not oppressive.
No, that's it. It really is, and it is beatable, and we've seen people do their very best to do exactly that and beat this.
It might actually be beaten just here.
So Larson untapping his Devoted Druid.
To have Collected Company available? No.
Path to Exile comes back, and it's Kitchen Finks. So Path to Exile is still open in Larson's hand here, so he, as you said, Simon, he knows what he needs to play around to beat here, and he wants to keep this 1 mana removal spell ready to go. And
you don't cast it. That's the main point.
Okay.
You're only waiting for you only have it as battle rate protection.
Yeah, this isn't one of the weaknesses of non-Grixis. The fact that there are no counterspells to worry about.
And then it's a really intricate dance. Javier is now looking at this battle rate and he's saying, okay, check, I have that. He's looking at the Path to Exile in Christopher's hand and he knows, okay, I need to discard that with Inquisition or with my Liliana. So I know one of my Death Shadows is dying, but I need to stay alive on 5 life. My opponent is slowly but surely amassing an army that will kill me. But if my opponent attacks with everything, he's also risking to just lose on the spot.
So Dominguez now with the Traverse the Ulvenwald. He might be thinking about a Street Wraith there. Christopher Larson's life total at 20?
With all the kitchen things, I think we saw 1 attack by Death Shadow last turn, maybe.
Okay. Well, he was on 26, and then another Kitchen Finks has come down and gained him 2. So if he took 8 off a Death Shadow, then that makes a lot of sense here. Street Wraith is the pick here off of Traverse the Ulvenwald. There's not something you see. There's something you don't see every day.
No, and I'm a bit confused. Isn't another Death Shadow just superior? When you look at this, maybe Javier is just afraid that he might be losing this, but this to me seems like almost like a losing attempt.
Well, he's going for it now in any case, down to 3 after having cycled that Street Wraith. He's got another one in hand.
The path is public information, right? The path is...
The path was taken off of the Eternal Witness, so Larson knows it, Dominguez knows it, everyone knows it. Here's Team of Battle Rage, and in response, it's going to be Path to Exile and an extension of the hand. Javier Dominguez recognizing that there was just no way past what Larson was trying to do here, and opting to scoop him up here. So the Dane goes to 4-0 after a handy win over Dominguez, and this is exactly how you want to start your tournament, coming off 3 by Simon Gertzen.
Yeah, I think he made it a bit too easy for Larson, who was favored, but he wasn't. It wasn't easy for him to close out this game. So I would have at least played on a little bit longer.
Well, that's the way she goes. That's all she wrote for this match here, sports fans. But stick around, because on the other side of these messages, we've got more action coming your way from GP Birmingham. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you back here very soon.